Okay, here we are back with this lift cylinder off the 2030. Now we've got it all stripped down and there's a few things we needed to deal with. So on the main piston here, when you try and look up the old numbers for the O-ring and backup like I have here, and like the old ones that were on it, John Deere wants to upgrade you to another number now. And look, that's okay, but they didn't have any stock anywhere in Australia of that. So to replace this O-ring here, I went to my local Hydrolink in Bundy Bear. They're a hydraulic supplier. They gave me the O-ring and we have a backup washer on each side. And look, that'll be fine. If you remember when I stripped it down, it was working okay. And we only had the O-ring and one backup washer. And that was rocking back and forth in the groove. So probably not 100% of a good idea. So what we've done now, it's a 92mm bore. And so what we've done now is got a backup washer either side and an O-ring. You can feel the O-ring protrusion, no worries at all. And when you get something level across it, it actually, you can just see it just rocks on the O-ring. So we do know we have protrusion. So I'm going to run with that, I'm happy with that. So we'll pop that over there out of the way. Now down in the bore here, we have a couple of score marks. And look, that just happens over time when the piston, a little bit of rubbish comes in and it goes up and down there. So we're just going to deal with that. You can see a line around the top there. That's the limit of how far it comes down normally. But that would be the piston ring normally. And we could always pop a new groove in the piston here, chuck it in the lathe, pop a new groove in and put another seal up further if we needed to. But what I'm going to do there is, you can feel that no worries at all, but just to ensure there's no high spots, I'm going to give it a bit of a run with a hone. So I'm just going to put a bit of WD-40, bit of possum pea in there. And this is just a deglazing hone, nothing special. Now it can go right to the bottom, so that's about how far we are right at the bottom. And we don't want the stones to come out so far that it flicks out and gives us a bit of a surprise. So all we're going to do is just run this up and down 10 or a dozen times, and we're looking to take any high spots off that may cut this O-ring, or any sharp edges that may cut the O-ring. Now the old O-ring wasn't cut when we pulled it out, so you can see that there it was okay. I've had that tractor for many years and look, we've had no trouble with the hydraulics. It's just while we're here we may as well do this, so I'll give this a run. Okay, let's have a look at that. I'll just take the hone out of the drill for the moment. I'll have a little bit of a wipe up in there. And we have to take this housing away and give it a good wash now, because any of those little particles from stone or anything like that, we want to get all that out. So you can actually, it's raining on the shed roof now, you'll hear a little bit of rain, but we'll try and soldier on. So look, that's not a bad finish there now. We're not looking for a finish to like a big crosshatch pattern like on a lift cylinder, on a engine cylinder. We're just looking to smooth out any high spots and any irregularities. So look, we're happy with that. We'll take that away and wash that. But for the moment, I'll just slide it over to the side there to buy a bit of bench space. Now, for the next little part of preparation, we need a gauge, and over here we need a porta power. So I actually went and bought the porta power just for this job because it's been something I've been meaning on doing for some time. Now, in the end of the porta power here, we have the surge relief valve. Now, if you remember, the surge relief valve was a little valve that's screwed in here, and the idea of that is when the tractor had an implement on the back of it, and say you're bouncing down the road and you're getting a lot of shock loading, this little valve here would let any excess pressure out and save cracking the housing. So in the early tractors they had this little fella here. Now this little fella here was a little bit known for blocking up, but if you're going to upgrade the cylinder, and you need to for some reason, like on the 2650s and things like that, they have a big valve in here, far bigger surface area, less chance of it playing up. So we're going to, I've made a, look, all it is a little T fitting. I've gone quarter BSP into a T that fits the NPT of this here. I've got a Stealth test port on here, so we can screw that on. Now, the pump pressure on these tractors is 2,350 pounds per square inch. What that is in bar, I don't bloody know. And so we'll try and set that up. We'll get the gauge going here. Now we'll have to zero it. Okay, we have 0 PSI there. So if I can set that up, this is a bloody shit fight, isn't it? Perhaps if I come under here. And what we're looking for is when oil comes out this end here, I might be able to bring this around a bit to give us a little bit more angle on the hose here. We'll put the cylinder there, that'll hold it around there for us. So with that little fitting here, and the gauge sitting up there, can you see that? Yes, you can. Where's the best place? Look, down there's as good as any. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pump my porta power handle here, and until we see oil come out of here. Now, if we pump away and we get to say 3,000 pounds per square inch, something like that, and there's no oil coming out of here, we need to pull it apart or replace it. So we'll just give it a bit of a rattle. Probably shouldn't point it at myself. Okay, that went too high there for the moment. I'll just check. So that's too high. It is letting a little bit out, but I might just give it a bit of a flush through. So I'll stand up and really give this pump some. Okay, so now it's opened up. We'll see if we can. Look, I know it's free there, and the later pumps go to, oh, you can put them up to 2,650. But look, it is letting oil out here. You can see the drip. Back him off. We'll try and sneak up on it again. It was about 3,200. It's dripping there, but it's not. So it's about 3,500. That's a bit higher than I'd like it probably. I will just see if I can back that off a little bit and see if I can hop in the end here and get a screwdriver and pull that pressure back out. That's probably Loctited in. Hang on a sec, I'll go and get a screwdriver. Okay, I'm back. Like a bad smell. Yep. Okay, the little screw in the end here. We've loosened that a bit, now it's firm. So we'll just see what the pressure does there. So we're just around 3,000. Look, that's okay. How about we pull this apart? With a little screw. There's our little seat. So we'll just give that a little flush, make sure we haven't got anything that we don't want there. There's the ball. It's all very tiny, isn't it? That's probably got to sit in there. The little ball goes on the seat. We'll pop the little ball in. Then we'll put this screw cap in the end. Now we've flushed him all out. Okay, that little ball's not sitting where it should land. Okay, look, I've been buggering around with this thing for ages, and I've pulled it out, I've cleaned it up, I've got it back together. I can get it to sit at about 3,100, 3,200, which, look, I'm certainly happy with that. And I pump it up until it breaks, and until it releases the pressure, and then I can't get it to seal again. And what I believe is happening is a little ball inside there that I found, again, after dropping it. It's got a little wear pattern on it, and I can try and sit it down into where it's supposed to go, and once I break the pressure, once the pressure comes up, it must kick sideways and it doesn't want to go and seal in that exact place again. And that can be because of the spring sitting in there. So you can see the idea of it all is check that. The main thing is to check this has got oil coming out of it at around 3,000 pound. 26, 29, 3,000 in there somewhere, but it needs to seal off and then break or let the surge of oil pressure in the cylinder here come out and not damage the cylinder. So I'm going to have to work with this. I've been buggering around with this just for absolute ages now. and I cannot get this one. I can get it to seal once or twice, but I can't get it to seal permanently. So if we screw this back into the housing and put the hydraulics back on, well, we're building in a heap of trouble. So so I'll either replace this and I'll test the new one, or I may, I was thinking about the little ball they have up there and the little spring seat, and I was wondering about if it would be sensible to make a little pointy piece that had the little spring alignment on it and use that. But look, at the moment I can't get this working how I would like it working. So see, normally it would screw in there, and any pressure from bouncing down the road or something like that, it would let that free. Now, these had trouble in the past from a little bit of doing what mine's doing, but the other thing was the hole in them was that fine, a little bit of shit would get in there and block up, or a little bit of rubbish would come through. It would pop the ball off the seat, and then the ball wouldn't be able to come back on the seat, so all of a sudden you had hydraulics not working, which is what I have now. So I'll need to revisit this. I'll let you know down the track what I do, but if you can pump yours up here and get it to pop off at 3,000 pounds per square inch, or thereabouts, you know, it has to be a few hundred kilograms, or a few hundred pounds per square inch, higher than your standard pump pressure. So look, go for 3,200, something like that, 3,000, 3,200, and any surging that'll allow for that. Then if you have your pump snuck up a little bit, you should only, look, don't go any more than 2,500 on your main pump, but that'll give you a bit of surge relief there. So look, 27, 29, 3,000 in there somewhere, as long as you can pump it up and it's letting oil out when there's a higher pressure than your pump pressure, that'll be okay. So I won't muck with this at the moment. I'll go and give this a bath, and we'll get into assembling all the valves and that. Okay, I'll get rid of this little piece of paper. Now, the valves. We have the raise valve here, or the pressure valve on this side here, and we have the lowering valve on this side, and that comes out, the oil, when the valve opens, comes out the port here. So whether you get these valves mixed up or not doesn't matter. They're the same valve, but what I like to do, if you're not replacing everything brand new, is this seat and the valve I like to keep in the same place. I like to keep together. Now, with the valve here, you can see a little bit of wear mark right around there, and a lot of dealerships and that say, oh, chuck that out, that won't seal. That will seal. I've just got a bit of inox here, I'm just giving it a bit of a spray as I go. So this seat may have a slight little bit of wear too, but if these two have been sitting together and there's a little mark around the valve here, and that's pretty even all the way around, there's no humps or hollers or anything like that, there's nothing wrong with using that. Now, with the valve, how it works out of the housing, this all sits down in there, but this is the seat. So this is the first one to go in. So when the valve goes in, the valve sits down in to the valve there, down into the seat, and you can see, like, it doesn't rock around, that's a good seal. So you need a bit of pressure to hold the valve down. So instead of putting the spring on, what they do now to keep it all straight, there's a guide here, so that goes down, and that pushes on this shoulder on the valve. So the valve is held true here, it's held true on the seat, and it's held true in this guide. So on top of the guide goes the spring that holds our valve tension on. So with this being fixed, this will go up and down like that a little bit. And the keeper on the end, which goes this way, it has a hole in there to centralise the spring. Well, that comes down, and when you press the bottom of the valve here, it just comes off up and down on the seat. So and the valve goes inside. So look, it's a basic system, very basic, it works well. we can start assembling here. So look, all we need to do, and what I like to do, I just keep everything clean as you go. Drop the seat in, and I like to drop that with the valve. It's just a way of pushing it down in there without being too rough. And you'll see the valve sits out the bottom of the housing there. You can see that there, yeah. So we put that in. I'm just using a bit of WD-40 on this, just to keep it all lubed up as we go. You can use oil, engine oil, just whatever you feel like. That sits down there. And with just holding spring on that pressure on that spring now, you can see as I push this valve up, it actually wants to spring back on its own. It's not a good representation there, but I will do a better one. So once we get to that stage, we have the end caps. Now the Sparex kit comes with new end caps, and on the end cap you'll notice on the outside there's a little lip on one end. Now that little lip is so when the springs go into the housing there, the retainer sits up against that lip, and there's a machined away surface here, and that's a place so the spring can sit in there, and it helps hold the spring true. So this end cap does a couple of things. It's a retainer for the spring, and it has an O-ring and a backup washer on the inside to seal the cavity of the oil, and it also has an O-ring and a backup ring on the outside. Now in here there's a circlip groove and a little wire groove. Sometimes you need to sand a little bit. They do get a bit of a burr from time to time, but normally we're okay. So we know that this is the spring side, the side with the little hollow for the spring. So we'll pop the spring back in there out of the way. So we look to have an O-ring in the groove, and these are quite firm, these O-rings. They should be 70 Duro, and because the oil pressure is on the spring side, we then put the backup washer on the outside. So the spring side gets the O-ring, the side that takes the wire clip at the end there, that actually takes the backup washer. So same inside, it works exactly the same. Where's the join there? There it is. So we just try and feed, I like to feed this in first, and then we can sit it down out of the way. There we go. And then bring the O-ring in here. On top, because I find it's harder to get that backup washer in with the O-ring there, because the O-ring doesn't want to sit where you'd like it to sometimes. So that just has to sit in there. That looks good. So I'll grab a bit of grease. I like to put a bit of grease there to help guide the O-rings in. And then we come down over the top of the valve here and try and get that in without cutting these bits here. So, which can be easier said than done at times. Make sure that's all in nice and tight. Okay, that's sitting there just for the moment. Now I'm going to get a hammer and I'm just going to bump that down a little bit further. They get a bit, the tension seems to beat you there. Okay, and I'll just we need to hold that down there. Get the new wire clip, poke him in the groove quickly. Check that it's in the groove correctly, and it is. Okay, so then when we get a screwdriver under the valve here and put him up, that retainer comes right up against the top there. It's sitting in deeply and we have a nice feel there. So the valve springs back and forth easily. So no biggie. Okay, I'll put the next one in, exact same job, and I'll come back when we start to look at the initial adjustments down the bottom here. Okay, you can see I've put the valves in there. Now if we bring an O-ring, pick up one side and work the valve, it's springing back under its own tension, no worries at all. On the lowering valve we do the same. That's springing back, no worries at all. And you can hear it banging back. Okay, so there's a check valve in there. Now the check valve takes the pressure off the raise valve. So when oil comes in, it comes in past the check valve, comes in through here, past the raise valve, into the cylinder, and then the check valve takes the load. Save those little O-rings and all taking the load. So look, all we need to do there is we pop that in there. Now there should be a new O-ring in the kit for the plug. Get all the rubbish out of there. I would reckon it'll be that bloke. This fella. Okay, so we put an O-ring on the plug here, and look, it's just a case of do this bloke up. That's a 7/8 spanner doing that fella. Where are we? There we go. And if you remember when we took it out, there was a plug that come through the side of the housing there. At the moment we're going to do that up again, and that is just for testing purposes, nothing else. You will see what we do with that later on. The later cylinders don't have that. So yeah, it's just one of those things that on some models you'll need to put that back in, and it's only for testing. You'll see what we're getting to shortly. And on the main valve here, on the main control valves, now if I try and lay that over there like that, I think you can see, then this housing here, it sits over the top. These all line up, and these two surfaces here, they rock back and forth. They rock back and forth here, and they either open or close the valves. So we'll give this a little bit of a wipe up. Now, one thing that may be of interest to you is there's a screw adjustment here, and it's in through here. So what we can do is try and show you that spring adjustment, that's on a taper here, and that taper sits in the back of here, and that's what goes on the two valves. So when we drop this down over here, and we put there's a washer, a spring, and a little E-clip to hold it all in place. Oh, there we go. Right, so, oh boy, too much go, Lance. So now we have that control in there like that, and we can see that movement there. So this screw here, we can actually screw that back out until all that movement disappears. See, that's gone there. But this is a closed centre hydraulic system. So what we need to do is just holding the bottom one there, the bottom one where the spring goes. There's a little bit of movement there. So if we take it out until there's no movement, there's none there. And you don't want these valves to ride. You need a gap in there. So you just take that in. I can just feel a little bump there. Take in a little bit more. There you go. I know those valves aren't riding. I just have a little bit of movement there. Now that is important. And with the testing that we're going to do shortly in the press, if you've got that wrong, if you've got too much slop there, you'll have oil pouring out the rate of drop screw. So I'll see if I can find a blanking plug for here, and I'm going to put a little bit of oil in the cylinder. I'm going to put a little bit of oil in the cylinder for here, and I'll zoom out a little bit. A bit of oil in the cylinder. I'm going to pop the piston in, and we should, if I can blank this off somehow without brazing a hole into the end of it, find another blanking plug, we should be able to pop it in the press and have a bit of a look. After assembling the cylinder here, getting ready for testing, I had to work out a way of plugging this hole up here to get something done. But I was looking at this surge relief valve, and it was annoying the crap out of me really that I couldn't sort it out now and here and now, and I couldn't find a little ball nice enough to do it. So what I ended up doing is I pulled the grease nipple apart. So I got a grease nipple, the little ball in the end of the grease nipple. I ground the end out of the grease nipple. There's a little spring, and I've put it on the seat there. It's nice and round, looks like a good thing. So, and I've had a bit of a fiddle here, so hopefully you can see that gauge about there somewhere. And you're looking for when this spurts out here. So we're looking at about 33. There, 33. So we can adjust that back a little bit, but look, that's fine. I've taken that back, so we'll just have there's 3200. And it can hold like 2,900 pound without dribbling, 3,000 pound without dribbling. So we know that'll lift when our pump's set at 2,300. So there we go. More than one way to skin a cat, I suppose. I've probably had that gauge where you can't read it. I've been looking at when it blows off, not at what you can see. So, job done. So that was something that was going to hold the whole show up, and it was giving me the willies. So I'll undo this now. I'll put a bit of tape on it. I'll screw it in there, and next time you see this, it should be across in the press where we can test it. Okay, you can see I have the cylinder in the press. Now, what I've done, I've assembled it all. I have the valve clearance here that I need, and I filled the cylinder probably 3/4 full with oil. Then I put the piston in, turned it up, opened the exhaust valve, the outlet valve, and bled the air out, and then just put a bit of pressure on there. So at the moment, there's a couple of things we could look at. Now, I want to shift the camera for a moment. Now, I'll just swing you up there. Now, we're sitting on 15 tonne of pressure there. It's holding 15 tonne. You might hear a bit of noise here. Okay, so that's 16 tonne of pressure. That's just buckets of pressure, you know. Yeah, it's just plenty. So we haven't got the surge relief valve leaking. The gauge is staying pretty well put, so we haven't got anything leaking past the piston here. We haven't got the valves leaking down the bottom. So we're holding pressure up there okay. So we'll have a look down here. I'll zoom out a little bit here to try and give you the full picture of the test. And what we're looking for here is, if we put this up out of the way, where the outlet comes out here, we're looking for oil dripping out of there. Now, there's an oily film there, but it's not running out there at all. Round the piston cylinder here, we know it's not leaking out there. Now, the oil from the pump comes in and up into this port here. It goes in this port there, past the inlet valve, and then that check ball holds it in place. So we know that with that system there, how as we have it, that cylinder is holding. Now, look, we're still on 15 tonne at the top. We may have dropped a little bit, but we haven't got any major leaks. Round the back here, the surge relief valve, it's not leaking, not dripping. And with this valve here, we know that we've got an air gap there. So if that was tight, it would leak out of this valve probably. So I'm going to go and get a screwdriver now, and I'll show you how that works. So with this adjusting screw on the taper that we showed you earlier, if I just bring that back, I can feel the pressure coming on there. And those valves won't reseal. See, once I've opened it, it won't reseal now. The oil keeps coming out and coming out. The pressure's dropping off up the top. You can see the air bleeding out there. So you have to make sure that this fella here has an air gap there. It's not riding on that valve. So I'll pump him up again a bit. And we can see that that's just got a little bit running out there now. So all in all, if I take this until it's just rocking there, we should be okay. The oil from in the valve housing here and that dribbles out a little bit after I've let it release. So we know that cylinder's pretty good. The valves are sealing okay. Remember the marks on those valves? We're worried about them sealing or not. This is your raised valve. So we can open that up and there's nothing coming out here, so we know the check valve's there. And our lowering valve here, when we push him down that way, well, the oil comes out past the rate of drop. So we've just tested that cylinder. We know now. I'll pump him up again. Okay, that's on 15 tonne, and there's no oil leaking where it shouldn't be. So we can really put that back in the housing when we get to that part of the job. We can put it in with faith that we've got that right. We know that the surge relief valve or thermal bypass isn't leaking. We fixed that. We put the little ball in out of the grease nipple, and it seems to be working fine. There's a fix for you. These valves are sealing. The check valve is sealing, so we can confidently put that back in the housing and set it up when we get the tractor going again and know that we're on track. So there you go. That's the end of the cylinder video. When we go to put it back in the housing, we'll we'll concentrate on anything that needs to be done with these other adjustments. So we know that cylinder's right now. You can go and put it in with confidence.